Hello, it's a very good morning from Nigeria's capital city, Abuja. Welcome to Venice 10 on NTA News 24, reaching you live from Abuja. I am Musbat and Wahab, and we'll begin with the headlines. President Buhari congratulates U.S. President Joe Biden, expresses optimism in the new administration's to strengthening existing cordial relationships with Nigeria and Africa. Federal Executive Council approves a harmonization retirement age for teachers in Nigeria. President Buhari swears in newly appointed members of the Code of Conduct Bureau and Police Service Commission. Islamic scholar secures truce with bandits and kidnappers in Kaduna State. All right, thanks a lot for joining us on the news. But right now we have to take you out there to join our OB crew for the first annual National Tax Dialogue being organized by the FIRS.
Once again, thank you all for coming. We appreciate and we are grateful for all the special guests who flew in and to make this occasion what it is. We'll be commencing immediately with the welcome address by the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mohammed Nami.
Okay. Good morning. President Muhammad Buhari, President Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, the Senate President and Speaker, House of Representatives, the Executive Governor of Lagos State, the Group Managing Director, NNPC, the Controller General of Customs, my distinguished board members, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a heart filled with gratitude that I welcome you to this historic maiden edition of the National Tax Dialogue. It gladdens my heart that we are able to initiate this important dialogue that seeks to redefine our perception and approach to taxation in this country. For us at the Federal Inland Revenue Service, we are convinced more than ever before that indirect taxes can become a live wire of the Nigerian economy if properly harnessed. It is as a result of this conviction that we deemed it necessary to put together this all-important conversation. You will agree with us that for taxation to grow beyond just being a mere tool for revenue generation, it must be seen to be merely the mainstay of the economy, which serves the developmental needs of the citizens. Without a doubt, tax is today gaining currency as a defining factor for functioning of government in all ramifications. The universal collapse of traditional government revenue sources and the consequential resort to tax is a testimony. The well-known arms race among nations is gradually giving way to tax race. The international struggle for and against digital services is just the beginning of the tax race. It is a race for all nations, developed or developing. And for Nigeria, it is a must-win race. The challenges of tax administration in Nigeria is a product of many factors, such as improper tax-paying culture, which evolve over time, inadequate tax education, disconnect among government agencies, trust deficit between citizens and government on the utilization of tax revenue, multiplicity of revenue collecting agencies, and advent of digitalized economy. In order to overcome these challenges and improve tax revenue, the input of everyone is required. A whole government approach is required, such as the harmonization of government processes, improvement of collaboration among government agencies, harmonization of taxes and incentives, and synchronization of trade, monetary and fiscal policies. The digitalization of taxation is an embarrassing issue, an all-embarrassing issue that requires collection efficiency, transparency, and revenue assurance in Nigeria. It is a common knowledge that a nation which hopes to win a race must put her best team forward. The National Tax Dialogue is an avenue for perfecting strategies for winning the tax race. The FRS is providing the platform for everyone willing to propose unbiased ideas that will help Nigeria win the race at all levels. As such, tax dialogue is for all. The main objective of National Tax Dialogue is to bring together world-class professionals in every field of human endeavors to generate expert ideas that will aid tax policy formulation and strengthening tax administration. At each edition of the National Tax Dialogue, contributors are expected, among other things, to examine the role of each level or arm of government in the Nigerian tax system with a view to recommending necessary legislative, executive, or administrative actions. Propose appropriate strategies for sustainable revenue mobilization in Nigeria. Suggest updates to the national tax policy and advise federal government on the effective implementation of the national tax policy. Profile ideas on how to attain better collaboration among government agencies, particularly Ministry Department agencies, Central Bank of Nigeria, SEC, and government revenue generating agencies, including FRS. Advice on digitalization of tax administration in Nigeria. Provide expert ideas for efficient management of national tax expenditure, and recommend measures that will promote collaboration among revenue generating agencies in order to optimize revenue for the Federation. The world is witnessing unprecedented challenge with the COVID-19. A second wave is ravaging all countries, including Nigeria, and the economy was accompanying the pandemic is worsening by the day. Expectedly, many countries are adopting counter-cyclical fiscal measures to circumvent looming economic depression. The approach of many countries is to spend more while reducing taxes. Nigeria is in a difficult state, and there are not enough savings to spend. The government has had to resort to borrowing in order to support its expansionary budget in recent years. Nigeria's low tax to gross domestic products ratio is in itself a cause for serious concern. According to Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria recorded a total collection of about 8.8 trillion from all sources in 2019, translating to a tax to GDP ratio of just 6%. This is rather backward and far from the required revenue needed to buoy up an economic heading south. One of the solutions is to shift tax from income onto spending, which can easily be achieved using indirect taxation. This strategy is in consonance with the Nigerian tax policy, which provides that the tax system should focus more on indirect taxes, which are easier to collect and administer and more difficult to evade. This is the most widely accepted direction the world over. The foundation for the move towards indirect taxation was laid in the Finance Act 2019, with a change in the rate of value-added tax from 5 to 7.5%. The service is making very good progress in implementing the change. This is reflected in the VAT collection in 2020, which exceeded that of 2019 by over 25%, notwithstanding the fact that the economy was shut down for about 5 months. Similarly, FI significantly improved revenue from stamp duties in 2020 to over 600% of 2019 collection. It is expected that further legislative interventions will be made to enhance revenue from indirect taxes. Business are fast dumping the brick-and-mortar model for online digital model. Tax authorities across the world are similarly adopting digital models in their approaches to taxation. Indeed, it is imperative to digitalize tax administration, as doing otherwise will result in a near zero revenue collection in the near future. The FRA started the journey to automation several years ago when it launched Project FACT. Several other initiatives were launched to further take advantage of evolving technology in taxpayer registration, online payment platforms, remote filing of returns, etc. However, there was very limited resources with the various initiatives due to inadequate statutory framework. A quantum leap was achieved with the 2020 Finance Act, which provided legal grounds for deployment of technology in taxation and tax administration. The service is grateful to Mr. President, the leadership of National Assembly, the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and all other stakeholders that worked together to enact the necessary laws. The service is taking advantage of the new law to embark on studies with the assistance of friendly tax authorities and international tax organizations with a view to developing a robust digitalization roadmap. The roadmap will enable the service to digitalize its whole operations in a systematic, coherent, and efficient manner. There is so much to look forward to in the coming years. The FRS is starting this decade with the resolve to leapfrog tax administration into the digital age. Ladies and gentlemen, we are banking on your continuous support as we embark on this wondrous journey. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we all have the duty to ensure that Nigeria's economic bottom remains afloat, stable, and progressive, and that Nigeria wins the tax race. This explains why Federal Land Revenue Service have assembled the top notch in political leadership, international relations, developmental finance, academia, business, accountancy, and taxation at this maiden edition of the National Tax Dialogue with the theme Taxation in a Post-COVID-19 Economy. Our expectation is nothing less than the best of outcome. As such, we enjoin everyone to be open, vocal, and active. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Chairman Joint Tax Board, Mr. Mohamed Nami, for clearly articulating the very, very important initiatives taken by this administration to ensure that this national cake is bigger, to bring in the resources and the funds needed to help finance government projects and programs to improve and enhance the lives of our teeming population. And we thank you so much, sir. It's my honor and privilege to now invite to speak to us online, joining us virtually, the chief host for this event, and Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. Thank you, ma. A round of applause for her as she takes our address.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, members of the Federal Executive Council, Chairman and board members of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, heads of agencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real honor and a privilege for me to be in this first national tax dialogue. It is clear that the growth of our economy and our ability to provide the necessary revenue to support government in its determination to facilitate better life for all Nigerians depends especially on pulling together as a nation actionable ideas through dialogues like this one and faithfully implementing the good ideas that come out of such dialogue. As you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has complicated a lot of issues leading to, among other things, cyclical economic crisis. There is also a significant fall in crude oil prices, resulting into huge funding gap for government. This trend is projected to continue into 2021, hopefully not beyond, as the pandemic continues to disrupt economic activities globally. The lockdowns that had to be taken by government in 2020 and the associated reduction in economic activities during those periods are expected to bear negatively on companies' 2021 taxable profits. The extent of the revenue decline from corporate income tax may not be known until mid-June 2021, when most companies will be filing their tax returns for the year. But despite government's best effort in providing palliatives to cushion the effect of the pandemic on businesses, families, and individuals, the impact has not been as severe. Many people are struggling to provide food and other basic needs, while a lot of businesses are struggling to keep their employers in work. The situation has presented government with a very difficult task of balancing the need to support struggling businesses and families
As you could see that we seem to be having some challenges with the Honorable Minister's connection. Maybe Ma, you will complete your address in the latter part of the program. So that, thank you, Ma. We will proceed to take good messages, and we'll start from the representative of the Senate President, Senator Issa Jibril. Let's welcome him warmly with a round of applause. Thank you, sir.
Apologies.
The special guest of honor for this occasion, His Excellency Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria. The guest of honor and Speaker, House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, very well represented. The chairman of the occasion, His Excellency Dr. Kayode Fayemi, the Executive Governor of Ekiti State and Chairman, Nigeria Governors Forum, the Executive Governor of Lagos State, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, the Chief Host, Mrs. Zainab Samshuna Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and the Minister of State, Prince Clement Agba, the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Services, Mohammed Nami, various heads of government agencies here present, in particular the Group MD of NNPC, representatives of various private sector interests, very well present here, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the press. First, I want to appreciate the efforts of the board, management, and staff of FRIS for the various initiatives that they've embarked upon, the results of which are already manifesting. I am most pleased to be a special guest at this important dialogue. It is surely coming when we need to be innovative in sectors concerned with revenue generation. The COVID-19 pandemic has been most virulent and has disrupted practically every sector of our lives. Apart from the very sad cases of deaths, it has strained our sources of revenue, which invariably affect our economy. The challenge is now for us to be creative and to be prepared to sustain the new ideas and policies we are coming up with. I see the initiative of an annual dialogue on taxation as one step in the right direction. This is because of the benefits of pulling experts together for their thoughts on a crucial issue like taxation. I therefore heartily congratulate you for this initiative. It is important to add that uncertain times like this require a higher level of alertness. The alertness should not only be on consolidating on old and existing gains, but on charting new directions in line with unfolding realities. I reckon you identified this in your plans around discerning what the new normal will be for taxation in the post-COVID era. We have severally stressed the need that diversifying our economy away from oil is now urgent. I'm talking further about diversification of our economy. I want to state here emphatically that is very, very crucial now than ever before. First, because of the unpredictable nature of the world oil market. Secondly, we should very much be mindful of alternative sources of energy that have been developed all over the world. That will further cripple our market for oil. Thirdly, and very importantly too, we should also be mindful of the environmental degradation that goes along with oil drilling. I think it is time for us to go into full-scale diversification of the economy. We are also making practical efforts to actualize it, as reflected in the increased interest in solid minerals, steel, and agriculture, amongst others. The strength of a diversified economy lies in its ability to guarantee multiple streams of income, to create stability, and to withstand shocks. It is also a prerequisite for a more sustainable growth, useful for overall development and the increased happiness of the people. We will not rest in this regard, in addition to exploring further options on enhancing taxation. Taxation is central to conversations on revenue generation for its ability to foster inclusion and to increase citizens' sense of responsibility. While it demands fairness and justice, it also enables participation in the revenue generation and governance process. Regardless, the surrounding issues require constant debate to improve on its efficiency and its productivity. Doing it annually, like you have set out to do, is even more rewarding. It will enable predictability and will also help us look forward. Like I hinted earlier, I am confident that this dialogue will be most rewarding because of the range of experts we have assembled here today. Be assured that you are welcome to share the outcome of your deliberations with the National Assembly for possible legislative support. In wrapping up, I want to state here and emphatically add that whatever we are doing today to combat or to mitigate the challenges of COVID-19, to me, is work in progress, because the terminal date for COVID-19 is yet to be determined. So as much as possible, we will do what we can. But at the end of the day, we should be mindful of the fact that there are still many challenges, many hurdles ahead of us, because we don't even know when this COVID-19 will ever end. We're talking of second wave, third wave, and fourth wave, but we should be prepared. And I think at the end of the day, we'll be able to weather the storm, and Nigeria will be on the sustainable growth path. I also, on this note, want to state that it is a great pleasure to be part of this dialogue, and once more welcome you all on behalf of the organizers. I wish to state that I wish to wish all of us fruitful deliberations, and then while keeping safe, to ensure that we are in tune with the COVID-19 measures. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for the rep of the Senate President. And thank you, sir, for reiterating the commitment of the Senate to supporting the executive in enhancing tax revenue generation. We're grateful. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, if you permit, we will go back to the minister just for her to round up our statement. Thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you very much, and apologies, technology failed me there. I just want to continue by reiterating that the President assented to the Finance Bill 2019, and in that bill contained exemptions that were given to small businesses that were to pay zero tax, and also a reduced tax rate for medium-sized businesses. Furthermore, in the Finance Bill of 2020, there are further relief that has been provided by for taxpayers, specifically that workers earning minimum wage will not be subjected to a personal income tax. And also, we have been able to reduce the minimum tax rate threshold for businesses by 50%. These actions that government took were deliberate. We decided that it is not a time to impose any new taxes or to impose more challenges on the taxpayer. 2021 is a year of recovery, a year that we will be recovering from recession, and a year that taxpayers, both businesses and individuals, will be setting back to the path of growth. On the revenue side, We are committed to deploying technology to make tax payments and tax administration easier and more efficient for the purpose of ease of compliance also for the taxpayers. We are also reforming the tax process, refund process. We are collecting VAT on cross-border transactions and putting in place measures to block leakages. We are also continuing our monitoring efforts and enhancing taxation of multinational enterprises, which are doing businesses in Nigeria. The Finance Act 2019 contains a provision that allows us to use the concept of significant economic presence and brought it into our domestic legislation last year, starting with the taxation of income generated via business, digital platforms and other online platforms. This year, we continue our work with OECD inclusive framework to stop base erosion and profit shifting. It is within this context that we must understand the importance of the theme of this maiden edition of the National Tax Dialogue, which is taxation in a post-COVID-19 economy. As such, we urge you to generously contribute ideas during this dialogue to improve our tax system and also to set our economy back on the path of growth. As the government continues to do its best to cater for citizens in the face of daunting economic challenges, citizens also must perform their basic civic obligations by paying their taxes correctly, promptly. To this end, the government has expanded access to actionable data, and it is working with the OECD Global Framework on Transparency and Exchange of Information for tax purposes to ensure that there is no hiding place for tax dodgers. The recent launch of the System of Automatic Exchange of Information is a step in that direction. Accordingly, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, every taxpayer, every tax practitioner, every lawyer, and indeed every well-meaning Nigerian is called upon to join hands with government to respond to its effort to reposition the economy and to provide better living conditions for our populace. To this end, I want to emphasize that tax compliance is key. And in the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, we have set out to ensure tax compliance to regulations, to laws, to administrative measures, and also compliance to penalties. This compliance will be driven by the maximum use of technology, setting clear key performance indicators that will be underpinned by the use of technology. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your kind attention, and also congratulations to FIRS for this maiden edition of the National Tax Dialogue. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause for the Honourable Minister. Thank you, Ma, for clearly and articulating the various incentives that this administration has granted to taxpayers just to encourage a better tax compliance as part of disruptions caused by COVID-19. And I'm sure that Nigerian taxpayers, both corporate and individuals, will respond accordingly and ensure that we pay our taxes as are when due. We will continue to take the goodwill message and our appeal for them to be brief. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we will call on the Honourable Saidu Musa Abdul, the representative of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, to bring a goodwill message. A round of applause for him. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the President Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces, President Muhammadu Buhari, Your Excellency, the Chairman of the occasion and Chairman Nigerian Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, Your Excellency, the Executive Governor of Lagos State, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, the Minister of State, Finance, Budget and National Planning, the Chairman of FIRS, heads of agencies here present, members of the press, all invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you the greetings and best wishes of the House of Representatives, and I thank you all for taking time to be here today at this important event. As the government continues to work to diversify our economy away from our reliance on income from fossil fuels, we have an increased obligation to improve the way we impose and collect taxes in the country. The executive, legislature, and the organized private sector have to work to strengthen our tax collection system. This is an important objective that serves the best interests of all the Nigerian people. The dialogue we have come to hold here today is a novel yet integral part of how we collaborate to achieve a more effective tax system in the country. This is the first dialogue of its kind, but it cannot and will not be the last. However, beyond formal, large-scale conversations, there ought to be ongoing engagement across all the stakeholder groups in smaller units designed to drive particular outcomes. The one thing we ought always to keep in mind is that nation building is a joint task, and we will succeed together. I congratulate the chairman, management, and staff of the Federal Inland Revenue Service for the vision and organization of this event. And I thank you all for once more for being here today. I wish you all safe journey back home. God bless you all, and God bless our Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Representative Said. Thank you very much, sir. It's now my honor and privilege to call on the chairman of this occasion, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Ekiti State, who is also the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, to bring his remarks, Dr. Olukade Fayemi. Welcome, Your Excellency. Thank you, sir.
Your Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Commander-in-Chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, the Chairman of FIRS, representatives of the Senate President and the Speaker, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here today to witness this inaugural annual dialogue on taxation. And I want to thank the chairman of FIRS for asking me to chair this important occasion. I've looked forward to this event for a while because with the pedigree of speakers at the event, I'm sure Nigeria's tax environment will be sufficiently enriched by the dialogue. As we are all aware, the impact of COVID-19 has not only exposed that every society is only as strong as its weakest link. The extended global and national lockdown also had significant impact on the fiscal health of the federal and state governments. This is because despite the fact that Nigeria's economy is now more diversified than ever before, with oil and gas sector contributing less than 10% of GDP, our revenues are still strongly linked to oil receipts. At the peak of the price crashed below $20 per barrel. FAC receipts dropped below 650 billion naira monthly, a level long regarded as the minimum for fiscal sustainability. This means as we continue to diversify the economy, we must pay more attention to the growth of non-oil taxes. While we at the state level must also strengthen our internally generated revenues. I must commend the FIRS for its performance in the 2020 fiscal year, despite operating in the most challenging period many of us have experienced. The service not only collected 4.9 trillion in taxes, achieving 98% of its target, only 30.6% of this was attributed to petroleum profit tax, from what used to be over 50%. It means we are starting to see a diversification of revenues, tracking the economic diversification objectives of the APC government. Whilst I acknowledge the progress we have made especially with the use of technology for filing, assessment, and payment. I hope the speakers and discussants at this dialogue will interrogate how Nigeria can further deepen the use of technology to improve tax compliance nationally and across subnationals. While the early results of COVID-19 vaccines fill us with hope, the pandemic is still very much with us, and it has probably led to permanent changes in our world as we used to know it. It has taught us to embrace technology, and we must continue to deepen its use to make tax payments more convenient. We must also strengthen accountability because there is a stronger need to reduce the trust deficit between governments and the governed. This is why I am pleased that the Nigerian Governors Forum has deepened its partnership with the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning to implement the World Bank-supported State Fiscal Transparency, Accountability and Sustainability Program, SIFTAS. This program not only ensures that states publish their financial information to improve transparency, it also provides a framework for citizens' engagement during budgeting and supports states to improve revenue collection, especially by supporting land administration reforms. This is aligned with the Open Government Partnership, which Nigeria and several states have signed up to. We will see a significant reduction in the trust deficit that still exists. I am confident that my brother governors will speak some more on these reforms in their respective states. We also need to interrogate how to organize our economy better to attract both domestic and international capital. As the New England slogan thoughtfully reminds us, a rising tide lifts all boats. It is therefore important to ensure we have the tools to attract private capital, boost economic activity, which will in turn boost taxes. I hope the speakers and panelists interrogate the conditions required to encourage and sustain capital formation, which ultimately leads to the creation of jobs. This will free government to focus on social services like basic education and healthcare, security and the rule of law, and ease the fiscal pressure currently placed on the federal and state governments. I'm hoping that we can discuss how to further deepen the collaboration between federal and state tax institutions using the Joint Tax Board and other mechanisms. We are already seeing improvements across states, even with the impact of COVID-19, and I'm confident the result of deepening such efforts will see a growth in our tax GDP ratio. This is why we must develop long-term solutions that improve revenue collections, whilst also balancing the need to provide some economic stimulus, some of which are contained in the new Finance Act. States have also sought to balance this by improving the collection outside payroll taxes, despite the need to offer some relief to offset the impact of COVID-19. Finally, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, today, 70% of Nigeria's population is under 35 years of age, with the median age of our population put at 18 years. These statistics have significant implications for taxation. It means a significant proportion of our population will soon come into the workforce, and while this comes with the pressure of job creation, it is also a golden opportunity to introduce first-time taxpayers to civic responsibility by adopting technology. I look forward to an enriching dialogue and thank the organizers for inviting me to chair this occasion. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Another round of applause for His Excellency. And thank you, sir, for once again expressing the commitment of the governors through the Governors Forum to work with the federal together just to enhance tax compliance across the country, both at the federal and state level. Once again, thank you, sir. We will take a keynote address at this point. Will be joining us virtually the president of the African Development Bank, who will be speaking on taxation in post-COVID-19 economy. will receive that keynote address from Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, President of the African Development Bank, and that will come virtually. Once again, let's put our hands together for the ADB President. Please go ahead.
Your Excellency, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Your Excellency, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chief of Staff of the President. Your Excellencies, Governors, Excellencies, Ambassadors, Honorable Ministers, the Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Mohammed Nami, today's your day, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I would like to wish you first, Mr. President, and all of Nigeria a happy and prosperous new year. I'm delighted to address you today as President of the African Development Bank and, of course, as Nigerian. I thank you, Mr. President, for your incredible leadership, tenacity, and resolute support behind my re-election as President of the African Development Bank for a second term. I am proud to be a Nigerian. Nigerian any day, anytime, and anywhere. Thank you, Mr. President, for inviting me to this first national tax dialogue organized by the Federal Inland Revenue Services, FIRS. I congratulate you on this dialogue. We all live today in very difficult times in Nigeria, Africa, and the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. Too many lives have been lost. One death is one too many. I wish to commiserate with the government and with the people of Nigeria on the lives that have been lost. I wish to also commend the concerted efforts being deployed by Nigeria at all levels, including by the private sector, to tackle this pandemic. Before the pandemic, 6 out of 10 fastest growing economies in the world were in Africa. With the pandemic shock, growth plummeted. Africa's GDP growth declined by 2.1% last year, the worst in 2 decades. As economies went into lockdowns, people's incomes declined. Millions lost their jobs, trade volumes fell, and demand for goods and services declined. Cumulative loss to Africa's GDP is estimated at $173 to $236 billion for 2020 and 2021 respectively. Nigeria has not been spared. The economy shrunk by 3% in 2020 on account of falling oil prices and the effects of lockdowns on economic activity. The pandemic has impacted on budgetary balances and increased budget burdens. Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio will push debt service payments beyond more than 60% of federally collected revenues. That's massive. With shrinkage in oil revenues, debt service payments pose the greatest risk to Nigeria. The African Development Bank estimated that Africa faces an additional financing need of $125 to $154 billion by the end of 2020 to respond to this crisis. The IMF estimates that Africa will need $345 billion in additional fiscal space by 2023. Africa's debt also is rising. Debt to GDP, which has been stable at 60%, has suddenly risen to 70 to 75% of GDP. The bulk of the debt has been for private bond issuances on the global capital markets, otherwise called the Eurobonds. As countries' currencies devalued and external reserves plummeted, in the face of declining economic activity, many African countries face risks of debt distress. Now, out of 38 African countries for which debt sustainability ratings are available, 14 are in high risk of debt distress, while 6 are already in debt distress. Now, to put a human face on the pandemic effects, we estimate that 28 to 40 million people in Africa are projected to fall into extreme poverty, and 30 million jobs will be lost because of this pandemic. The African Development Bank has been very responsive in supporting Africa. The African Development Bank launched a $10 billion crisis response facility to support African countries to meet the fiscal and economic challenges posed by the pandemic. The bank also provided $288 million in budget support to Nigeria to cope with the fiscal challenges posed by the pandemic. The African Development Bank also launched a $3 billion fight COVID-19 bond on the global market, the largest ever social bond in world history. Now it's listed now on the London Stock Exchange, the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, and of course on the NASDAQ. I wish to commend the leadership of President Buhari and all of the state governors, and of course the leaders in the private sector in tackling this pandemic. It has been very challenging, given that we now have a second wave of the pandemic, of course. But let us not be deterred. Nigeria and Africa will overcome this pandemic. African economies are projected to recover this year. The African Development Bank projects that GDP growth will recover to 3.4% for Africa as economies open up and commodity prices recover, tourism bounces back, and global value chains recover their manufacturing capacities. We also project that Nigeria's economy is poised to recover to a growth of 1.5% in 2021 and 2.9% in 2022, according to the African Development Bank's soon-to-be-released African Economic Outlook. But building back, we certainly require a lot more resources. Taxes form a significant part of government revenue. It is crucial to ensure that the tax base expands. Given that over 60% of Nigerians are in the informal sector, priority should be given to support measures to move a large part of this from the informal to the formal sectors. Making tax codes simpler and reducing administrative burdens and formalities are important to move from informality to formality. Now, doing so will allow people to be able to better assess their tax obligations. Digitalization of tax collection and tax administration is critical to ensure greater transparency of the tax system, widening of the tax base, while mitigating compliance risks and encouraging voluntary tax compliance. The government should focus a lot on corporate taxes and ensure full compliance. But it is important to also ensure that such taxes do not discourage investments. Nigeria can learn from the case of Estonia, which taxes corporate incomes but based on distributed profits. This allows corporations to reinvest their profits in expanding their businesses. Taxing corporate revenue instead of profits will discourage investments needed to grow businesses and to create jobs. Now, natural resources tax can play a major role for Nigeria. Given Nigeria's high reliance on oil and gas and minerals, the government should ensure that these sectors pay taxes and royalties that are fair and that are transparent. Profit shifting, base erosion, and tax avoidance by multinational corporations form a huge part of Africa's missing taxes. And they account for a large share of the over $60 billion in illicit capital flows that Africa loses annually. Now, if companies invest in Africa, they should pay taxes in Africa. Governments should use business investment treaties and avoidance of double taxation to strengthen these incentives. Now, if a company works in Nigeria, benefits from Nigeria, it should pay taxes in Nigeria. Tax policy can be used to incentivize the closing of the massive infrastructure gap that Africa faces, including Nigeria. and Nigeria is showing good example. The new initiative between the federal government and selected private sector businesses to provide road infrastructure in return for tax rebates is an excellent idea. It is conditional, and it can be assessed and measured for delivery. Now, that's the kind of accountability needed, so tax rebates or exemptions are not abused. Today, the Dangote Group is constructing 19 key economic federal roads stretching for 800 kilometers across 6 geopolitical zones. Due to company tax credits from Mr. President, Executive Order 007 of 2019 that you signed. Congratulations. Now, however, governments should avoid overly generous tax holidays and tax reliefs. While there should be fiscal incentives, of course, to attract and support the private sector, governments should avoid losing too much tax earnings. Given the size of Nigeria's economy, the population, urbanization, and consumer